I've just discovered that unfortunately, because of how YouTube functions, I can't make videos that are more than 15 minutes long without verifying. The problem is that the verification system doesn't work, and even on YouTube's official video explaining that, everyone's commenting that it doesn't work. So for the time being, I'll actually just have to make videos that are less than 15 minutes long. This means that the order in which things have been recorded and the order in which they might appear in the list will not necessarily match. I'll probably have to start from episode 2, because episode 1 just doesn't. Well, actually, technically it'll be episode 3. But I mean world 2, because I don't have enough time. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the world of Trinn. This is a fantasy setting that takes place in 3 worlds, known as Phesmos, Dayun, and Nivacha. Beings in these 3 worlds are known as Phesmosians, Dayunians, and Nivachans. In the world of Trinn, there are 2 powers fighting for different goals. There's the Never, seeking to devour the 3 worlds and destroy them, and the Trinn, which the setting is named after. The Trinn can both refer to the organization, the setting, the faction, as in the organization, which is also the organization, the setting, and also the deity in which the organization worships, called Trinn. And then you have the Trinn, who are the worshippers of the Trinn, in the setting called Trinn. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk a little about the worlds themselves. So Phesmos is referred to as the first world. It is the largest and quite literally the first world to come into being, both in universe and outside of it. The Phesmosians live on a very cloudy world with very strong winds. The clouds are pink, which might look pretty but is actually poisonous to most beings who are not from Phesmos. This is similar to the world itself, which might look inviting at first glance, so just as it can look calm and majestic during some times of the day, it can very quickly become extremely stormy and dangerous. Dayun, the next world, referred to oftenly as the middle world, is the second largest world and the second world to come into being. Unlike Phesmos, Dayun is the world of forever day. It is never nighttime in Dayun. There is no day and night, it is only day. Phesmos has days and nights, and Nivacha also has days and nights. The ground on Dayun is blue, always blue. It's very reflective, very bright. Unlike the Phesmosians, oh my goodness, I've just butchered my own creation's name. Unlike the Phesmonians, oh my goodness, the Dayunians do not have wings. Instead, they are capable of hovering using other means, generally magical ones. As a matter of fact, Phesmos might have high cliffs and mountains, but it does not have any floating islands, unlike Dayun, where they are common. Dayun has giant cracks in the ground, massive canyons, great sprawling rivers, all very, very blue, very, very reflective. Food is scarce, but the world isn't toxic. It is, however, very warm. The weather might be mild, but islands sometimes fall out of the sky, posing a major risk to any who are unaware of the sounds they make when they're falling. Nivacha, on the other hand, is probably the most interesting of the 3 worlds. Nivacha is home of the 4 elements: water, earth, air, and fire, oftenly represented by the colors blue for water, yellow for earth, red for fire, and green for air. Traveling between the 3 worlds is functionally impossible unless you're with the Never or the Trinn. The 3 worlds only know of the others through legends, except for the Trinn, who can travel through, of course, the worlds under the protection of the god, to take tasks in order to basically destroy the agents of the void, which are basically forces of the Never, who are trying to consume the world and destroy them. Trinn is fighting a losing battle, Every time the Nether takes part of the world, that part will never be returned. Nothing new can be created, only things can be remade out of what exists. And this conflict is the core of the entire setting of the world. Conflict between the void, slowly consuming and destroying the last three realms to exist, and the Trinn trying desperately to stop the destruction of the three realms. Multiple sentient species can be found across the world, with the elemental world of Nivacha having 4 sentient species, while Dayun has 2 and Phesmos as well. As stated earlier, Phesmosians do have wings, both names, both species. The Unions, on the other hand, hover using other means. They tend to have more crystalline bodies, resembling spiders or crystals with legs, essentially. Meanwhile, the elementals each resemble their element. The water elemental race look a lot like fish with legs, using their hind leg as both a flipper and their tail is both a hind leg and a tail for swimming. The earth elementals, on the other hand, swim in the sand instead of the sea, having a similar body. The fire elementals tend to live on volcanoes and swim in magma, also having actually a hind leg foot, leaving the only elemental species to not use their tail for swimming through something being the air elementals who live on mountains and cliffs. Instead, their tail can split in two to become gliding wings, little glider wings, which they use to catch the wind to fly away into distant places. Now, the elementals all are not humanoid in shape. They have a teardrop-shaped body with a tail in the back and 2 legs. So the aquatic ones can swim, as I've stated. So the earth ones can dig / swim in the sand. Fire and magma, air, on the other hand, glide. Meanwhile, Phesmosians look a lot like birds with 3 eyes. The splinters are basically what are called the grands and the minors. So the main difference is scale. Grands are a much larger species, basically, native to the world, and they're herbivorous. On the other hand, the minors are carnivorous. They're much smaller, much more agile. Their preferred hunting tactic is like falcons. They go into a high altitude and then dive down. Other than their claws, the difference in their body structure isn't that different, it's just size and having claws built for killing instead of grasping plants. I guess their beaks are also a little different. The Dayun, as I've stated, are basically either shaped like a spider or shaped like a crystal with legs. Despite their appearance, they do actually have a mouth at the bottom of their body, and are biological, not some sort of artificial creature, something like that. It's just that they have a hard crystalline body that's very reflective, that helps them disguise themselves within their world. The Nivachans generally live sort of primitive tribal lives, not very advanced technologically. They tend to stick to themselves, live in small packed nomadic tribes, nomadic depending on the tribe. For the earth and the waters are highly nomadic. Magma fire stay in the same place, and air depends on the tribe. Some move from place to place using their little gliding tails. Meanwhile, others stay in the same general mountain range or cliffs. The Unions, on the other hand, have much more advanced culture. They tend to live in city-states on the islands, although calling them city-state is a bit of a stretch because most of them are only the size of towns. However, the largest of them could definitely be considered outright cities. They're much more industrially advanced, talking medieval terms, or actually a lot closer to antiquity. A lot of their technology would appear. So made out of materials native to their world, so very crystalline, very solid. Phesmos, on the other hand, live by clans. Generally, they have a group of a territory owned by them, and they have multiple regions which are inhabited within that territory. all loyal to a single matriarch or patriarch, who's the head of their tribe. Not exactly tribe, a clan. Now, in addition to having clans, there's also happens to have empires. So, unlike, say, the Union city-states, these empires have multiple cities under their control, as well as villages and towns. Their villages and towns would not look like what a human would expect. They look more like a bunch of nests on the side of a cliff, or on a massive tree-like structure with giant roots that are stretched long into the ground, and then the stem of the plant is actually way above the ground, hovering on giant roots, basically. And then on these giant roots, and possibly on some of the branches at the top of the plant, you'd have nests, which would be how their cities look like. So these are called arch plants. Now, these arch plants are massive. A single arch plant would probably rival a mountain, like not even a small one, something like probably in the range of, the largest of them would be probably somewhere between Mount Fuji to Mount Everest, which Fuji is technically a volcano, but we'll leave that for later. I'm reaching the end of my time limit. I'm not actually sure how close I am, but I don't really want to push it, so I think that'll be it. I'll probably add a bit more depth into the world later. This is technically my first episode, though it's actually the fourth if we include the introduction and part 1 and part 2 for the previous world, which unfortunately cannot be published due to how YouTube operates, which is just brilliant. So, adios.